This week we're going to be talking about the powerlifting movements, or the big three. That is going to be deadlift, squat, and bench. So this particular lesson we're going to be covering the deadlift and the variations of that movement. So the deadlift is a movement in which a loaded bar is lifted off of the ground to hip level. This is coming from a dead standstill, which is where it gets that name, the deadlift. It is one of three powerlifting exercises known as the big three, that being the deadlift, the squat, and the bench. So it does refer to lifting of dead weight from the ground, as I said in the previous slide. There's various different or variations of that. You can look at it being a conventional, is what we see here in this picture, with a straight bar, picking that up off the ground. We can see a trap bar, which is going to be what you see more often than not in the Springfield College weight room. I would say you'd be hard-pressed to ever see somebody use just a straight bar. Reason being that it's just a little bit more, mechanically speaking, advantageous to the athlete. It keeps the weight centered rather than in front of the body, which you see more with that conventional deadlift, which for the most part, or in theory, should be protecting the back a little bit more because it is in just a more favorable position. Sumo squat or a sumo deadlift is similar to that of a conventional deadlift. However, the stance is going to be much wider with the toes pointed out more. What that's going to do, and we'll see in the slides to come, the sumo squat or deadlift is going to really target the adductors more, or the groin area of the body, as well as a lot more hamstring activation. And then a kettlebell deadlift is another, I'd say, regression of the deadlift itself. So areas being worked, primarily it's considered to be a lower body lift. Hips, leg, it's often hips and legs and the muscles that are within those areas of the body. It's often considered to be a lower body pull, and we'll talk about lower body pushes and pulls in the weeks to come. But it is also used to strengthen the back, and it is considered to be a total body lift for the most part. What we see here in this picture to the right is in red all the muscles really being utilized within a deadlift, or the primary muscles being utilized. So we do see obviously everything within the legs being used, but as well as the abdominal area and the mid and upper back. What we don't see that also serves as a part of this movement is muscles within the forearms and shoulders and whatnot as well. So it's very much, even though considered a lower body pull, a total body movement. So some different variations of this, a kettlebell deadlift. We'll watch a little video on this to go with it.
Go. Kettlebell deadlift, we're looking for, you lay an egg, I come down to the kettlebell, back is straight, hips are back, stand.
What I want you to really see here is the fact that this is a hip hinge. You'll notice that his hips are higher than his knees in this movement. With the kettlebell, because that's going to call for a greater range of motion, you're going to see those hips drop a little bit more than you would, whether it be a trap bar, barbell, and so on. But we do see it predominantly be considered a hip hinge. So we do see those hips significantly higher than the knees in this movement. Also notice with the kettlebell, what he's doing is he's really reaching back towards his heels to really activate that posterior chain, the glutes and the hamstrings as well as a part of that. We also see a nice neutral spine the whole way. So what he's doing is he's really pinching his shoulder blades back together, but as well as squeezing his armpits down and back. So that's going to be what we call a shoulder pack, which is going to keep that weight tight to the body and avoid it getting away from it. But like I said, we do see that neutral spine all the way through.
Looking straight ahead.
That's our kettlebell deadlift. Wrong presentation. Progressing from that kettlebell deadlift, we can see a trap bar deadlift. So that's going to be that hex bar in which you're standing inside the barbell, or well, it's a trap bar, so not a traditional barbell, but you're standing inside the bar itself. What you would see here is the weight become more centered, because that is going to be right in the midline of your body, splitting you into a front and back half. So talking about that frontal plane. That bar, it's going to be a little bit more advantageous to the back, keeping it in a little bit healthier position than a straight bar would. So this is a video that has some good pointers on that.
I'm here with Tim Collins, and today he's going to demonstrate trap bar deadlift technique. We like using the trap bar because it helps us with educating young athletes on how to do the correct technique without as much risk of injury. It's also a great way to develop hip strength and power to make you successful in the baseball field. With deadlift technique, you want to make sure to keep your weight back on your heels, and that's why a shoe like the Minimus can be great. It allows us to push through our heels and really activate our hamstrings and our glutes to lift the weight. From the front, we should always be able to see the logo on your shirt. That's a way to ensure that your lower back and your upper back aren't rounding over and putting you in a bad position that may potentially injure you. So make sure to keep the low back nice and flat, slightly arched, and not rounded over as you lift the weight. Because deadlift variations are a little bit more technically advanced, we'll want to make sure that we do them first in our lower body strength training sessions. We'll usually shoot for 3 to 5 sets of anywhere.
So these are some good pointers in regards to the trap bar deadlift. These are the same cues that I would probably use. Biggest one is keeping your weight back on the heels. We want to be pushing through the heels for this movement, pushing the ground away rather than using our toes and so on. We want the low back to be slightly arched. We don't need it to be excessive, but just a light, nice little arch in that is going to be helping us keep a little bit more neutral spine and avoid us getting overextended in the movement. We also want to keep that chest upright and facing forward, showing the numbers. We like to talk about big butt, big chest, and squeezing our glutes like crazy through the top. So that is our trap bar. Next is our conventional deadlift. Once again, that's a straight bar. We would never really see that being used here in the weight room at Springfield, but it is a movement that we do see pretty common within strength and conditioning. So here's a little video showing that.
I'm Mark Bell from Super Training Gym. I'm going to show you how to do a conventional deadlift today. We're going to simplify it, try to make it only just a couple things for you to remember. I think oftentimes people are confusing the deadlift. They're trying to do an Olympic lift. They oftentimes squat down too far. They oftentimes overextend when they deadlift. We're just going to simplify it real easy right here. What you want to do is you're going to have your toes pointed outward slightly. You're going to cut your foot in half with the barbell, just like this. So as I'm looking down, it's right in the middle of my foot, okay? You get your air, okay? You can usually get your air at the top or at the bottom, whatever you're more comfortable with. Get a good grip on the bar. Make sure your hands are evenly spaced. And you want to get your hips lower than your shoulders and get your back straight. So it's going to look like this.
One of the bigger things that you see here is those knees, once again, being much lower than the hips are in this movement. So we do see that be a hip hinge as well. Predominantly neutral spine, keeping that bar tight to the body, in contact with the legs nearly the entire time. So that's our traditional deadlift. Moving on, our conventional, we go into our sumo deadlift. So with the sumo deadlift, what we said, we want to have a much wider base. So you notice that being one of the main differences in this movement, and the toes being pointed out as well. What we're going to be targeting primarily in this, that's different from a traditional deadlift or a trap bar, is going to be more so adductors. So in that groin area. You want to continue to keep that bar tight to your body, maintaining contact with your legs, and having that hinge aspect to it. So here's our sumo deadlift, just some pointers with that. Notice that the hands drop inside the legs. The legs are nice and wide with the toes out. We have a pronated grip with that. The palms are facing towards you. As we go up and down, those knees are going to be in line with the toes, as we see here at that bullet point. Our shoulders are going to be just slightly in front of the bar. We don't want to be too far, but we want to continue to bring that bar up with contact with the legs. Our lumbar curve is going to be somewhat maintained. We don't want it to be overextended. We don't want it to be overflexed as well. And a big one there, as we see in this bullet point, is keeping those hips and shoulders moving with one another. We don't see one move without the other. By doing so, that helps us keep a nice flat back throughout the entire movement. So now looking at form with the trap bar in particular, just a quick walk through that. We're going to be talking about setup, the initial pull/drive, lockout, and then our weight down. So with our setup for the trap bar, since this is one that we'd see most commonly in a collegiate strength and conditioning setting. We're going to be stepping into the trap bar to begin with. From there, we're going to hinge at the hips and the knees. So that's what we see right here. His hips are staying higher than the knees, making it a hinge movement, a hip dominant movement as well. We're going to maintain that neutral chest and spine. So thinking big butt, big chest, show the logo or the numbers on your chest. And you're going to grip the bar handles right in the middle. With that grip in the middle, what that's going to do is going to keep the bar from tipping backwards or forwards. It's going to keep it nice and straight. From there, we're going to pack the shoulders back by pulling the slack out of the bar and pinching those shoulders or those armpits down and back, bringing the shoulder blades together. And we're going to feel that full foot on the ground. We want the mental weight through the heels, just as the video had talked about. With that initial pull and drive, then, we're going to be actively pushing our feet down into the ground. We like to cue it up as pushing the ground away. During that time, we're going to simultaneously push up and forward with the hips, keeping in mind that those shoulders and those hips rise at the exact same time. It doesn't go hips first, then shoulders. We want it to be at the same time. We're going to maintain that shoulder pack in neutral spine position, as we see here, and we're going to contract the muscles through the back to ensure that safe posture. As we get up to that point where it really starts to feel very, very heavy, is known as our sticking point. We're going to really breathe out during that time, forcefully exhale. From there, we're going to get our lockout. We're going to completely neutral spine, straight up and down. We're going to forcefully extend the hips or drive them through at the top, squeezing the glutes and getting nice and tall. And then on the lower, we're going to perform the steps in a reverse order, emphasizing a flat back. Some common errors that we see here is a rounded or arched back. That's what we see right here. Notice that that's very, very arched. The other one would be a hyperextended, so we're very extended, a big curve in our back. We want it to be nice and neutral with a slight arch. Another thing that we can see is protracted shoulders, so that's no shoulder pack. That's what we often see when somebody's rounding their back. Their shoulders are being pulled forward, making it protracted. We want to retract those shoulders by pulling them back. We also see a jerking of the bar, which can cause the protracted shoulders to happen. We want to pull that slack out of the bar. We'll actually hear a click when we do so. And then we also see squatting rather than hinging. That would be when those hips actually start below the knees and we pull up. That'd be a squatting motion or movement. We want to make it a hinge so those hips stay higher than the knees the whole time. And then an improper lower or a lazy lower. Just some movements that we have for that is a hands-on. We can do some banded good mornings with a 3-second eccentric, 1-second iso, and a fast concentric. That banded PVC RDL, kettlebell deadlift, a sumo deadlift, and a trap bar deadlift. So if you have those resources, go ahead and give those a go.